Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Curious Realm coverage of the 2023 Psifest here in Charlottesville, Virginia. I have with me right now Debra Lynne Katz. She is the president of IRVA, the International Remote Viewing Association. This conference is taking place in part with the Monroe Institute, the people who pioneered the world of binaural beats. Welcome to the show, Debra. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for allowing us to come and sponsor this year's event. I was so happy that we actively had sponsorship this year and were able to come out and interview people and give you guys a little bit of attention to this amazing event that y'all put on every year.
Well, it was great having you last year, and I know we have a lot of fans of your show. So.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, it's been a great relationship to have. I have thoroughly enjoyed everything I've done with IRVA. And having you on, you wrote the book, Freeing the Genie Within. Let's talk a little bit about that and how you came into the world of remote viewing and IRVA.
Sure. Let's see, where should we start? Well, so I have been involved in intuitive development and intuitive practices for about 28 years or so. And so I had already had interest in really anything having to do with intuition, ESP, things like that. But I really got very interested in remote viewing when I started to do I read a few remote viewing books and started to do informal experiments with my students, and they were having incredible results. And so I knew I had to find out everything I possibly could about the topic. And I discovered IRVA and got involved maybe about 10 years ago or so, and been here ever since.
And now, not many people realize, but there's a world of remote viewing out there. There's not just one practice of remote viewing. There's intuitive remote viewing, there's protocol remote viewing, all kinds of things. When it comes to IRVA and their involvement with remote viewing, which side of the cube do they fall on more? Is there a side of the cube that they tend to go toward?
Well, it really starts with how are we using the word remote viewing? So remote viewing, IRVA is dedicated to the practice of remote viewing, and not every intuitive practice would be considered remote viewing.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone tends to kind of use these terms differently.
It's a catch-all almost.
The catch-all part is hotly debated within the remote viewing community, and because they don't really want remote viewing to be that term to be used to catch-all.
Yeah.
Mediumship is not remote viewing. If we're going to be technical about the language. Now, I'm someone who tends to be flexible, so I look at it as remote viewing a specific definition, which some people say it is. It comes from a very particular historical context.
Yeah.
It involves within that umbrella term, remote viewing, there's different kinds of remote viewing. So there's more structured remote viewing, which would be controlled remote viewing, or more freestyle remote viewing, extended remote viewing. But there's still some factors, such as it's done in a careful way, using blinding protocols, using structure, reporting in a careful manner. So that tends to be overall what remote viewing is. So you wouldn't call, like most mediumship practices, you wouldn't say that those are remote viewing. And some people say, like even simple clairvoyance, I'm just going to close my eyes and get an impression of something. Some people say that shouldn't be called remote viewing. If you just say, I can't find my keys, let me get an impression of them.
Yeah.
They say even that shouldn't be called remote viewing. Now, me personally, I do call it that, like, I just remote viewed where my keys are. So using it as a verb. But some people will argue with me about that too. So,
did you go through the chart? Did you go through the steps to find your keys? Did you follow the protocols?
Yeah. Or some people will say, well, you already knew they were your keys. You already knew the subject matter you were looking for, And so, that they may say that's just clairvoyance. But you know what? I would say, I sometimes do say I remote viewed my keys.
Sure. Well, and that's an important distinction to bring up, though, because honestly, it's interesting. Lynn Buchanan says all the time that, you can teach anybody to remote view, but you can't teach everybody to be psychic. We all have that propensity to be psychic, but whether or not you're attuned to be able to flex that muscle is different than controlled remote viewing. Controlled remote viewing is, once again, a very specific protocol and a way that things are done. Like you're saying, the fact that you know the object would be why most people would say, well, you didn't remote view it, because, well, remote viewing, you're given something blind. You don't know what it is,
right,
typically.
So we're still being psychic in both cases,
yes,
but just we're talking purely semantics here.
Yes.
But then you said controlled remote viewing, and controlled remote viewing is different from remote view. It's a method within overall remote viewing, but controlled remote viewing is very specific. And just like any methodology, and if someone's teaching one way of doing things, and someone calls it something else.
That's just it. When people say that remote viewing has been proven in lab work, that's what they're talking about, is the controlled remote viewing. The fact that we can statistically show that this is an actual thing.
Actually, no.
No? Okay.
Remote viewing overall, with what you said, that would be true of remote viewing, but controlled remote viewing is a methodology that the remote viewer is following step by step. So it's like it has 6 stages. You do one thing in each stage before you move on to the next stage. There's very particular terminology within that's different than in other parts of remote viewing. So really, controlled remote viewing that term should only be used to describe what a remote viewer is doing if they've been trained in that. As opposed to, say, extended remote viewing, which isn't using those steps, but is within the overall umbrella of remote viewing. So they're all being done in a careful, more scientific manner than other ways of doing psychic practices. But controlled remote viewing is a very specific method.
Yeah. And once again, statistically, utterly shown in labs. It's been, once again, the Project Stargate. Our government spent millions of dollars researching this literal technology. And once again, the idea that, yes, there are natural psychics, Ingo Swans, people like that, who have a natural propensity. But there's also that protocol that, like Lynn says, you can teach anybody that controlled form of remote viewing.
Right. And then some people may still more artfully carry it out than others. And Ingo Swann was the developer of controlled remote viewing. So even though he was showing natural talents, he developed himself as well. He initially did not know always how to do what he did. He worked with different researchers. His training was really in the lab with different researchers. And at that time, the researchers didn't necessarily know how to help him, but they just found that if they ran him through different experiments, they discovered learning curves with him. Like Janet Mitchell, who recently passed away, she had worked with him in a lab even before the governmental project started. And she noted learning curves with him. So with every different kind of target, like if it was a photograph or it was an object, it would he might not do so well the first couple attempts, and then he would start to do better and better. And by the end of the week, he was having really great results. And so they were both wow, this is interesting, because everyone has been thinking this is just a gift you have or not. But,
it
he
can
just
be
got
honed.
practice.
Yeah.
Exactly. It could be honed. with some feedback. That's why they found feedback is really important, because I was surprised about this. Like prior to that, they would have like psychic subjects, tune into an object or a picture or something, and they just wouldn't like tell them, what they were looking at. They'd just be like, okay, time to go on to the next trial. And they found like, you really need to let the person know what was the target. You have to evaluate what worked, what didn't work.
Yeah, a decompression session kind of.
Yeah, and then you learn from that. And so this is really something you can learn. And in addition to Freeing the Genie Within book, most of my other books are on intuitive development and how can you learn those practices. So not just with remote viewing, but I'm also very interested in mediumship and in clairvoyance.
Well, I mean, especially right now, in the last year, having quantum entanglement win the Nobel Peace Prize. That has been the one that I've been heralding since it came out, because that utterly ties into all of this. It ties into mediumship. The fact that two particles, despite distance, can still influence each other. It goes right along with that ninth grade science concept of we're all 90% empty space. I'm sharing an electron show with my brother in Texas right now. The idea that we in and of ourselves are an instrument. There was a study done not too long ago that basically came out and said that the human brain is a transducer. That's what it's made to do. We regularly pick things up. The question is whether or not you've learned to really pay attention to that little kite string that's attached to your belly button, where when you walk in a room, it's kind of like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here.
Exactly.
And you may need to listen to that. Because, we all have those intuitive things that happen to us. And if we learn to tune into that, you'd be really surprised how easy a lot of the hard things in life get. The hard decisions, things like that. They can really be pretty cut and dry once you start to pay attention to that and learn it.
Yeah, and that's exactly where it gets into manifesting, like working with the law of attraction, and you put it out there what you want in life. But then are you letting yourself go for that? And your body has a built-in intuitive system, whether it's in the brain, the gut, like your whole body is a sensing system.
Yeah.
And so your brain has said, oh, I want to find a good place to eat for lunch and in this new town. And your body, if you just let it freely go where it wants to, it's going to land in the right place, or even like meet up with the right person who invites you out somewhere. But you have to allow for that. And so many people, they have their brain stopping their body, right? It's like, oh, I can't go over there. I've never been there before.
It's like the logic center takes over.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're cutting off that intuitive signal that's designed to bring you to what you want.
Well, even to take that one step further, Deborah, the fact is we live 80% of our life in an auto-hypnotic state. We autonomically breathe. Once you know how to walk, you don't think about it. Your body just does it.
Exactly.
And our brain wants those patterns. It wants the freedom to not have to worry about a decision. And if you free it from that, it's amazing what comes out. I've told people for years that one of the things I do to go to sleep is wire cabinets. I build racks of gear and I wire them.
Oh, wow.
That's my counting sheep. But at the same time, one of the only remnants of my actual dream work that I have is occasionally I will build something in a dream. Like just the other day, all of a week ago, I saw a box in a dream. Like a tiny little computer capture box. And I woke up and I was like, all right. And I ordered the project box and I went back to sleep. And when it arrived, I built the box that day. I had all the parts. I had everything. All I was missing was the box.
And what was it for?
It's a portable capture machine for recording and things like that, for events, all that kind of stuff. So I don't have to bring a laptop and an interface. It's all built into one box. I put it down, push the power button, turns on, turn it off, go away. Everything's captured. They sell them for multiple thousands of dollars. I had a tiny computer and a monitor, and I just cobbled it together. But the fact is, I saw that box in my dream.
Wow.
I pulled that out of a dream and actually made it a real thing. And you can do that. It's possible. Part of my dream work used to be going to sleep with intent, going to sleep with the intent of finding the answer to a question.
And the thing is, when you actually follow through on that dream, like it's the follow through,
Yes.
right? And that's sending positive reinforcement to yourself to keep having that happen. What happens for people who don't do that, like, oh, I had a dream about this box and then I just, forgot about
a box.
Then it's like your subconscious just after a while just starts to feel defeated, like, what's the use? You're not listening to me.
Yeah.
And the system starts to almost kind of shut down or have a disconnect. The nice thing is for people who have had that happen, it's pretty easy to reverse that. It's just, to make the commitment, and then when you have the opportunity to listen to yourself, you got to act on it.
Well, and I think that might be one of the big hurdles, especially with remote viewing for the common person, is because much like manifestation or prayer, I think people get very discouraged when, like, they pray for something and then what they prayed for doesn't happen. And it's like, well, did you look at all the possibilities around it? Were you even supposed to get that? Or were you supposed to be presented the opportunity and it not be there, so you realize you weren't supposed to have it? Things like that. And I think a lot of people, when they first initially start remote viewing, come up against that barrier of, well, I didn't get this right, I didn't get that right, this isn't the thing. Instead of kind of continuing that karate of, you're going to learn wax on, wax off before you ever punch a bag.
Right. And, sometimes I always say, is the person, what are they really going for? Because let's say there's a job and you think you'd really like it and you don't get it, but like, why did you want that job? Ultimately what you wanted from that job, I believe you will achieve if you stay at it. Maybe that place wasn't going to be the right place for you. Maybe you weren't ready for it. Maybe you needed to work for 5 more years, develop yourself, and then you're ready for it. And a lot of people, I also feel like a lot of times it's just a matter of, it's not that it hasn't happened yet. And people are so impatient. Well, in this society, we have this idea that as soon as we want something, it should be there. And simple things can be there right away. Sometimes really amazing things. But, some things you have to be ready for. And you have to be ready for the change and want to deal with what's going to come with it. You want to have a successful business. Well, are you ready for all
the work that goes behind a successful business? There is that be careful what you wish for aspect, because it may just come true. And are you prepared for that? Because that may incur some work on the back end. I think we have definitely created an impatient society. As this came about, remote viewing, things like that, we were right on the cusp of a change in society. Things started that rapidity and that rapid process that we're in now. And to see this art evolve with that, not only as an art, but scientifically evolve with it, is absolutely awesome and phenomenal. It's great to see that the research has continued, that the research continues. What is IRVA looking at for the next couple of years? How are they looking to carry this research forward into the next generation, Debra?
Yeah, well, we have a lot of people operating now, more so than ever before, as what we'd call citizen scientists. And so really it's, so many of us feel that the field of research, remote viewing research, won't advance if it really doesn't explore what the intuitive or remote viewer, who the practitioner, what are they doing on the inside of themselves? What are they doing in their minds? What are they experiencing? How are they, when they have results, how are they getting those results? And so much research up to date, like it seems almost insane that this is the case, but so much research has always looked at the outside of the person, measuring reducing their work down to simple statistics. That's a constant problem in parapsychology. And so I do feel like IRVA just put out a study looking at how do remote viewers know when they're correct or when they're on target.
Yeah.
And it's really just a survey asking them, can you even tell when you're correct, and what's the indicator of that? And so I think there's going to be a lot of research that can build on even that answer. But, you know, traditionally, the idea that you would trust someone who's having an experience or reporting their, you know, impressions, and that would be important to even look at, or, you know, that you're going to trust what they say. Now, if this is just about proving psi, proving the existence of this phenomenon, then, you know, you can't just rely on a person to say, yeah, I was psychic, okay. But we're already past that, you know, so we really have to find out what are people experiencing. And the recent survey we did that I'll be talking about on Sunday, we're finding that, yes, I believe it was about 60% of our participants experienced remote viewers do know when they're on target, and so, or do know when they have a correct piece of information. But it's interesting because they experience this in different ways, and so we're finding that there is like a broad array of differences between people, and that's why oftentimes there's controversies in on the social media forums, you know, in different discussions. There sometimes
the camps can
really
be rough with each other.
Yeah,
the camps can be rough.
Yeah, and that's because, you know, different people experience their abilities in different ways.
Yeah,
and they practice. Some people want more structure. Some people, you know, want more freestyle. But some people are feeling more. Some people are seeing more, and you know, it really helps to understand these things.
Yeah.
So,
and it's interesting the synesthetic way in which remote viewing works. I was talking with Lynn Buchanan at breakfast, and like he was saying, he chooses a remote viewer depending on the task at hand from the client. So if the client wants to know what this thing should feel like, something like that, he will find somebody who has much more of a textural, and that's just it. You get impressions of texture, color, scent. It's literally from all over the brain, from all of the brain centers. It's really remarkable. And to know that, yes, if you dig into somebody's statistics, you can find out if they get more reliable hits on color than shape, if they get more reliable hits on texture than size.
And the reason we need that is because there's always going to be a certain amount of correct and incorrect data coming through. And when you're starting off, you do not want to care about, like, am I correct or not? You just want to tune into the target and be in the moment and not be worried about that. And so we've had criticism with our recent study from some people, you know, saying you're going to get people too fixated on that. And as soon as they're worried about performance, then they're losing the connection with the target. And I totally believe that.
I could see that.
You know, on the other hand, especially myself as a project manager, you know, sometimes we're using multiple remote viewers, and we might have, say, 8 remote viewers, and 5 of them have information, you know, saying like the missing wallet is over here in the forest, and 3 people might say, oh, it's over here in someone's drawer in their house. And so, you know, what do we do with that? You know, we have to have a way when the data isn't all matching. Of course, sometimes it's all matching, and it's like, you know, that's exactly what we would love to have happen. But some people can be off. They're just going to be off for different reasons.
Sure.
And so how can we evaluate that data? We need to have some markers. So like you've said, Lynn has his database, and he will or may even select the viewer ahead of time, knowing like what they're good at.
Yeah.
Because certain projects need people good at one thing over another. But an extra measure could be, you know, asking the viewer, like, how confident are you about this piece of information? They're not going to be confident about everything. But myself as a remote viewer, the reason I even thought to to bring this to our research group, and then we decided this question was important, was because after so many years of practice, I started to notice myself that I would have moments where the information came in a certain way where I was so positive. I would almost bet my life on it. Like, I
could
know
feel it.
This is going to match my feedback photo. This is whether I could feel it or it kept repeating. You know, that's the thing. What I do personally is I stay in a remote viewing session sometimes for longer than I need to. But what will happen is some data will come up on one page and then I'll kind of forget about it, and then suddenly it emerges again. I forget about it and then it emerges again. You know, so if I saw like water falling or moving 3 different times, you know, that's not going to be happening if there isn't water there. I can, you know, tell my project manager, you know, I am almost positive there is some kind of moving water there. Now, if I, you know, try to identify it as a river or a lake, I might be off on that. So, you know, can't say that for sure. But it is useful to know confidence levels, and not that they're going to always be right. But, you know, so it's getting into... This is what I appreciate about like present remote viewers, whether it's at IRVA or just, you know, there's people who have worked so hard on this. And really we're now getting into the nitty gritty of how do we perfect this. Not that it'll ever be perfect, but, you know, so we don't have to keep going back to the beginning of, you know, is this stuff even real? Which is important for people who are just coming into these topics or the community. You know, that is important to address. But if we always have to stay there at that basic level or questions, we'll never get anywhere.
If we have to preface every conversation.
And that's what's nice about it here. Like, we can go right into these, at a conference like this, we can go right into these topics and talks, whether it's in the presentations or, you know, over lunch. And we don't have to go into like, oh, you know, like, do you think intuition is real? Or, you know, we don't have to go there.
This is probably next to MUFON, which is a lot of methodology. Like, the one thing that I love about them is the fact that, like, the whole first day is a 7-hour-long field investigator training.
I've been to it.
You have no need to go the first day unless you're going as a field investigator. But it's one of the only conferences that I attend and sponsor where a lot of the talk is protocol. A lot of the talk is methodology and method of examining evidence, things like that, as opposed to a lot of Bigfoot conferences, other paranormal conferences that I go to. And I find that is the side conversation here as well, amongst tables and just people chatting just right here is, how do you go about telling that it's a hint or an idea, a hit or a hint? You know, and that verification, that cross-verification between people of methods of how they're doing it. And it's really great to see that community build itself and really have, once again, like you said, that feedback from other people, which is hugely important.
Yeah, and, you know, over the years, like skeptics, which have been there since the beginning of time, that they you know, like to say, well, there's a lack of critical thinking by anybody that believes in these things. But one of the reasons why I love doing surveys of whether it's remote viewers or psychics or mediums is what a lot of people don't understand is how educated and professional the people who are involved in these topics, especially when it gets to the people coming to conferences. You know, in every survey, I list out their professions. We have surgeons, nurses with PH.Ds. We have usually a lot of different kinds of engineers and accountants and architects.
There's a smooth almost 60% of speakers here with letters and commas behind their name.
Not just the speakers, people attending the conferences, people doing remote viewing, and, you know, not that you have to have, you know, any kind of qualifications, but, you know, it just speaks to that this is not just people running around who aren't thinking about what they're doing, you know, even people who don't do formal research or understand it, I'd say anyone that does a remote viewing session and then really, you know, carefully analyzes, you know, what did I get right? What did I not get right? But also, is it possible that, did I talk to anyone who might have revealed the target to me? Or, it's just like going through, did I do this in a careful manner?
Yeah.
And so, people are already like being self-scientists, the people that are involved in this work here. And, that's where there's all these different levels of science, I would say. And, you asked what our vision is for the future, and it is to also like bring more people that are remote viewers, but maybe not formally trained scientists, and get them more involved in research as well. And I've seen it change even as we've been having different meetings and, just explaining to people, because if remote viewers are already operating in a semi-scientific manner, then if you can just train them a little bit, like, okay, if you do a session, if you're going to make a future prediction, email your prediction to somebody so you have evidence, just like how to take steps. So if you would then want to later report on your work, you can say to someone, it wasn't just, I did this and then said I did this.
Finding an outside person to archive for you, kind of, to be like, hey, hold this. I'll come back for it.
Yeah.
I'll come back to see if that's the valid information.
Yeah. And I always recommend that, if you have a dream and you think it could even possibly be precognitive, even if you're not sure, email it to yourself, email it to someone, write down every single detail, because, it's almost like if you don't write it down, it doesn't count. Just go over the top recording, even if you don't think every detail is going to matter or be relevant, because so many times, whether it's with a dream or it's with something in remote viewing, there's things you might leave out, and those are usually the things that turn out to be the most important. So, documenting and, how do you document and how do you do it in a professional way? And covering your bases like that. And so, that's what we're all about, is helping people amp up their game and helping viewers so that they could be employable, because how many people in this world are looking for things, need help with their, business decisions, need to know what's going to be happening, in the future, that there is so much potential.
It's interesting to me the actual number of remote viewing consulting agencies that there are out there, and the number of consulting agencies that employ a remote viewer. There's quite a few. There's quite a few.
There's a lot, and there's that number is increasing.
Yep.
But it'll only continue to increase if the outside world, can see that they can work in a professional manner with. That's right. With these people, and so that's what we're here to help.
Well, unfortunately, and I've been saying this about a lot of topics. Fortunately, the conversation has been flung wide open in the last few months with whistleblower testimonies, things like that. To hear in the NASA panel on UFO UAPs, to hear NASA scientists say, we have been grossly negligent in our job as scientists. We've been calling this fringe, and unfortunately been kind of disgracing scientists that study the fringe, when the actual job of science is to study the fringe. It's to find out what that, but we know that there is a 3 to 5% unquantifiable anomaly. That's our job as scientists. Like, I don't know a chemistry professor that would let me pass with a 95% remainder of solution. Where'd the other 5% go? Yeah. You got to find that 5%. That's the job of science. And now, fortunately, yes, Stargate, right over there in the library, there are 4 3-finger-thick books that are in the entirety of the Stargate archives. Everything that our government spent millions of dollars researching in this. They don't spend millions of dollars researching something that they, A, can't use, and B, ain't real.
Right. And so to still have scientists, and there are still scientists out there saying like, oh, there's no research in this area. This research has been going
voluminous.
on.
Voluminous.
And, there are at least 4 journals dedicated to these topics. The Journal of Society for Psychical Research has been out. Well,
comes out once a year.
And, there are journals that have been coming out now for, over 100 years. And so people just haven't read the research. They haven't found it.
They haven't been exposed to it.
Right. So we have to do a better job of, getting it out there. But at this stage, I'll just say to people, I'm sorry you're not familiar with the research. It's there, so you cannot say it's not there.
Yeah.
And, hopefully that'll start to change.
Well, I think a lot of discussions on these topics in general are starting to change, Debra. The minds of scientists are truly starting to open when it comes to this stuff.
I hope that's true, because, really it does come down to just outright discrimination. It's like to call something fringe or pseudoscience, or, it's just like calling anybody,
no, it is a ridiculous and ridiculing way to go about things.
And that anyone would think that would be okay to just dismiss an area of exploration you don't know about. Like
that's not exploration. Literally.
That's what's mind-boggling.
Yes.
Is that people could, still in this day and age want to reject it. But a lot of times.
Well, and I think that goes right back to the beginning of our conversation, manifestation, things like that. Unfortunately, and even with science, if it don't fit in that box of expectation, then it's not. And it's like, hey, just because your prayer wasn't answered in the way you wanted or expected doesn't mean it wasn't answered. Doesn't mean that the bell didn't ring. You just weren't looking for that sound as the bell.
Yeah. And it may still be working in you and through
absolutely.
you. It's just not shown up yet in the way you can recognize
it. Precisely. And having that open mind, having that open box, because once again, even at the last whistleblower hearing, the first words out of their mouth was, if you're tuning in for Little Green Men today, you've come to the wrong place. Because the conversation got wider, a whole lot wider. And when they said non-human intelligence, that leaves a whole panoply of things and leaves a whole range where you're not putting it in a box. And if it doesn't fit here, then it's not,
Exactly.
And when you're talking exploration, scientific exploration, you've got to have that open mind. To walk in with an expectation of result is literally what started this science. The fact that when scientists went home and were thinking about their experiment, that they were actively influencing their experiment. That is the research that started all of this. And now, once again, with non-locality and quantum entanglement, that is being proven.
Yes.
It's being proven that, yes, you can absolutely influence that by just thinking about it. You can change it. It's pretty remarkable. Debra, thank you so much for taking the time, especially here at the beginning of the conference. It's fantastic. It's great to see such a huge number of people here. The ballroom is completely full. It's been great.
We have 218 people signed up, and that's almost 100 more than we had last year.
It's incredible. It's an incredible growth.
And that's just in person. I think we have about 100 people online right now.
Wow.
So,
incredible. Well, Debra, let everybody know, of course, other than the Curious Realm store, where they can go to purchase Freeing the Genie Within and your other books, and how they can get involved with IRVA, how they can become an IRVA member, become a supporter like me, and how they can even learn remote viewing.
Well, they can check out my own website at debrakatz.com about my books, and they're also available on Amazon. And then for IRVA, just go to IRVA.org. And again, that's the International Remote Viewing Association. We'd love to have you check out the website, become an associate member at least. And, we have a lot going on online, our research meetings, our classes. We have a whole educational program. Mm-hmm. And so, check us out, IRVA.org.
Fantastic.
Thank you
Debra,
so much.
Thank you so much once again. While you are online, checking out everything from IRVA and Debra Katz, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can find all of our content. That's where you can find all of our episodes. That is where you can find our library of books from all of our guests here on the show. Stay tuned through these commercial breaks. We will be right back with more coverage from Psifest 2023 with the International Remote Viewing Association and the Monroe Institute. We'll be right back after this.